If you're wondering why you keep feeling overwhelmed day after day, week after week, maybe year over year, today I'm going to give you the inside scoop on why. You're listening to Overwhelmed Working Woman, the podcast that helps you be more calm and more productive by doing less. I'm your host, Michelle Gauthier, a former overwhelmed working woman and current life coach. On this show, we unpack the stress and pressure that today's working woman experiences. And in each episode, you'll get a strategy to bring more calm, ease, and relaxation to your life. Hey, thank you so much for joining today, friend. It's good to have you here. Today, we are going to look at the 4 habits that will keep you stuck in overwhelm. We are going to look at multitasking, overcommitting, perfectionism, and negative self-talk. We're going to explore why these habits can become such a problem and contribute to overwhelm. And you know, I'm never going to leave you hanging. I'm also going to give you the solutions for each one of these and give you actionable steps to stop doing these things that are keeping you stuck in stress and overwhelm. So let's get into it. Okay, so like I said, we are going to look at 4 habits that are keeping you stuck in overwhelm. And the very first one is multitasking. Multitasking is one of those things that seems like it would be a good idea. It feels like, oh, I'm going to be so efficient and do 2 or 3 things at one time. Just be on a call, but I'm also going to answer a couple emails while I'm on that call. And what happens when you do that, studies actually show this, is that multitasking forces your brain to rapidly switch tasks because we can't actually do 2 things at once. You're maybe listening on the conference call for 10 seconds, then you switch to the email and you're focusing on that for 10 seconds, but tuned out from the conference call, then you go back to that. So when you're forced to rapidly switch tasks between things, it leads to decreased efficiency and increased distractibility. And it's proven that you make more errors, which completely makes sense to me. I absolutely make errors when I'm trying to multitask. It's also not great for your body. It temporarily raises your stress levels and your blood pressure and your heart rate. So I don't even have to explain why that's not good. It's just putting additional unnecessary stress on your body. Also, as a funny side note, as I was writing this part of the podcast, my son came in while I was trying to concentrate and write and asked me to Google a car that he really needed to show me that he wants. Keep in mind, it's like a $200,000 car, not a car that he's actually going to be getting anytime soon in life. So, such is life. We get interrupted and we have to either multitask or switch tasks back and forth sometimes. But the good news is, and this is the solution, is that we can solve the additional stress that's caused by multitasking simply by not multitasking. A term that I love is single tasking. So that is just where you focus on one task at a time. I'm going to give you a couple ideas for when and how to do that. What I mean by that is scheduling a specific time for your emails. So you can check your emails maybe at 9 and noon and 4. And if you immediately want to push back on that and think like, I can't do that, maybe you check yours on the hour if you have that kind of job. Another thing you can do is just limit your distractions. I always keep my phone notifications off, but when I'm working, I will turn my phone upside down or set it in a different part of the room. So it's just one less thing that I have to worry about. I don't need to get a notification or hear a sound that my phone potentially could make, or even just see something on the screen. Another quick way to improve your ability to single task is to declutter the space where you're working. So, for example, if your desk has a bunch of stuff on it, I often have my notebook and maybe some post-it notes or things that I'm writing on. And every time they catch my eye, they kind of distract me. So if I really need to concentrate on something, it's very helpful to me to close my notebook, set it at the edge of my desk, clear off the 15 cups that I usually have on my desk by the afternoon, and then I can really focus and get to work. The second habit that's keeping you stuck in overwhelm is overcommitting. So we've got multitasking first, overcommitting second. The definition of overcommitting is to obligate yourself beyond what you have the ability to fulfill. So think of it like this as an analogy. If you have $10,000 a month and you buy a house with a mortgage payment of $11,000 a month, you literally have obligated yourself to an amount that you cannot fulfill, you cannot pay. Now, think about your time like that money. Think about how many hours there are in a week. 24 hours in a day, 168 hours in a week. How many of those are you already committed to working or sleeping? And of those hours that are left over, you don't want to fill every single one of them up. You want to have some that are free and white space. The solution for this, and I think much like multitasking, this can just become a habit where you say yes to everything. You try to fit in everything, even though you're jam packed, you'll try to fit one more thing in there. So the solution to this is to evaluate. So, do I really want to do this? Don't commit to what you don't have to give. Be super selective about what you commit to. And don't forget to leave yourself some white space. There is a great episode number 51, where I talk about the calendar cleanout method that I use to manage my calendar. I put things on the calendar based on how long they will take, and that helps me know realistically what I can get done in a week. It even has a free worksheet for you to get it all figured out. So check that out if this is an area where you know that you struggle. The third thing that can keep you stuck in overwhelm is perfectionism. Perfectionism is a tough one because if you're a person who has high standards, pays attention to detail, has a strong work ethic, and continuously tries to improve themselves, those are all great qualities. But those also, if taken too far, turn into perfectionism. And when it turns to perfectionism, that can cause a lot of overwhelm. Because when you are a perfectionist or use perfectionistic thinking as you're working on something, you set high standards that are basically unattainable. Perfection is unattainable. Nobody is perfect, leading to dissatisfaction and a sense of failure with anything that you do. So let's say you work on a project and you get it to 99% complete and perfect, and there's one outstanding issue. If you're a perfectionist, you may focus on that 1%, and that constant dissatisfaction or sense of failure will be there with you because of that 1%. That keeps you in overwhelm because you can never actually fully complete a task then. Just like we were talking about deep tasking, perfectionism is associated with increased levels of stress, anxiety, and even depression. And it can have a pretty significant impact on well being and just mental health overall. When you obsess over details, it can be very hard it makes you more inefficient, and it often can result in missed deadlines. So, here are some quick things that you can do to combat against perfectionism if this is an area where you suffer. Number one is limit the time that you spend on tasks. So, if you have a pitch that you have to create for work and you know that you could easily spend 10 hours working on it, try to figure out how many hours you actually need and then set time limits and work in it, maybe in spurts. So, let's say you work 1 hour today and 1 hour tomorrow, and you consider that to be your, as Brene Brown says, crappy first draft. So you put it together. It's not perfect yet, but at least you can get it on a piece of paper. And then you assign yourself a third hour where you can make the edits, make it look as good as it can be, and then call it done. Another great thing, I think this is a huge tip for people who are perfectionists, is to seek feedback from others. And what I mean by that is if you've worked on that pitch for 3 hours and it feels like, oh my gosh, there's still so far to go, and you run it by a trusted colleague who says, yeah, it looks great, or you take it to your boss and she says, yeah, this looks awesome. Sometimes when you get stuck in perfectionistic thinking, it's helpful to get an outside opinion. Okay, so that is perfectionism. The last and final one that will keep you stuck in overwhelm is negative self talk. I want to talk to you a little bit about what negative self talk actually is, because sometimes I see people who have negative self talk. We all do. Some people have a lot of negative self talk and they kind of beat themselves up for having it. So I just want you to remember a couple things about the thoughts in your head. One is the thoughts that come into your head are not optional, they're not in your control. They're just popping into your head. So if you have a thought that comes in, let's just say I'm working on this podcast and I have a thought that comes into my head that says, this is a dumb episode and nobody's going to like it. I didn't create that thought. It just popped into my head. So it's helpful to think about that your brain just sometimes offers negative thoughts. And when it does, what you do have an option to do is to evaluate that thought, decide if you want to believe it and believe if it's true or not. So for example, let's just go with this podcast example that I was talking about. When it comes into my head, I can just observe, oh, interesting. I just noticed that negative thought dropped into my head. And I'm just going to go ahead and let it drop out the other side. Like it can just pass on through you can notice that your thoughts are not in your control as far as what comes into your head. You can also observe your thoughts without being attached to or involved in them. The reason why negative self-talk really keeps us in overwhelm is because, once again, it increases stress and anxiety because it creates this sense of inadequacy and a fear of failure. So if I'm really thinking, this podcast is terrible and nobody's going to listen to this episode, I'm thinking, okay, well, then why am I doing this? I'm afraid it's going to fail. I don't even want to put it out there. So it really makes us hesitant to do things. And that in turn, over time, decreases your self-esteem. And when you decrease your self-esteem, you start losing belief in your abilities. And then it's just another vicious cycle where negative thoughts can create fear. Fear creates avoiding tasks, resulting in unfinished tasks, which leads to more negative self-talk, which then leads to more overwhelm. So again, just like the one I gave you the example of before, this is just a thought loop that can happen. But right now, I want to just give you a couple solutions that you can do right away. First is recognizing and challenging your negative thoughts. Like I just explained to you, noticing that those thoughts are coming into your head, but also remembering that you don't have to attach to them. You don't have to engage with them, and that you can challenge them or come up with new, more positive thoughts. The positive thought has to be true too. It has to feel true to you. So if I'm thinking this podcast episode is the worst one ever, I'm going to let that thought go and I can replace it with, I don't know how this one's going to do, but I feel really passionate about the topic, as an example. The second thing you can do is practice gain thinking. Episode 63 talks about this concept of gap versus gain thinking. What gain thinking means is that you look backwards at what you have already done and you focus on your past successes and learn to focus on what you're doing well. So, for example, if I'm thinking to myself, this podcast isn't going to be good, this episode's going to be terrible, I can look back. I can easily measure my past successes. I can just log into my podcast and see how many people have listened to each one of the episodes. I can see the reviews that I get. I can see that I've consistently done it over time. And by focusing on what has gone right, it helps me come up with true positive thoughts that I can use to combat that. So in summary, we've looked at the 4 habits that contribute to feeling overwhelmed and to keep you stuck in that overwhelm, including multitasking, overcommitting, perfectionism, and negative self-talk. What I want you to take away from this episode today is, without judgment, just noticing which one of those areas is your biggest struggle if you had to choose from one of the 4. And then when you choose which one it is, like let's just say you choose overcommitting, then go back to one of those solutions that I suggested. So maybe what you do is you go look at the tool for how to manage your calendar better. And next week you work on removing a couple meetings or commitments that you've made to yourself. So just take one tiny step towards solving this overwhelm problem that you're feeling. The goal of this particular episode is not to make you feel more overwhelmed because you need to fix a bunch of things. Just choose one solution and try to implement that one. All right, that's it for today. Hopefully you are ready to take your one small step to move into feeling less overwhelmed. If you would write a review if you haven't done so already, I would absolutely appreciate it. And yours may be the next one I read on the podcast. Have a great week and see you on Monday. Thank you for listening to the Overwhelmed Working Woman podcast. If you want to learn more about my work, head over to my website at michellegothier.com. See you next week.